This is Dan from learningcameras.com, and here we've got the Canon 70D. So let's take a look at how this camera has been performing for us. So, overall it's a great camera. When Canon first introduced it, a lot of things that were new on it that we had never seen before and didn't know were coming. Most notably is the new image sensor, which uses a new technology to be able to achieve autofocus in live view with the results close to what video cameras have been doing for a long time. Now, we typically haven't seen those kind of results on DSLR so far. Nikon has been the closest to getting us there. Canon has really been lagging behind on that. So this was the first example with that. It is on a brand new 20 megapixel sensor. So we'll take a look at that and see how it stacks up. But the first thing I wanted to tell you guys is a bit on the build quality and ergonomics of the camera. It is an upgraded from the 60D. It is still plastic, but it's definitely built up a little bit stronger on there. Canon says it has some O-rings and seals to make it not quite waterproof, but just a little water resistant, a little bit weather sealed on that. Not quite to what you would see on like the Canon 7D or the 5D3 or anything like that, but just a little bit more. So if you get a little bit of rain on this, I wouldn't worry about it at all. Now, one big negative on that, you do still only have one SD card slot. Nikon did put two on their cameras. I love having two. A couple reasons on that. One is because if you're ever shooting something really important like a wedding, it's great to have backup of that, always continuing onto a second card, just in case you ever lost one card, the card got corrupted, something like that. You still have your images safe on the other card. The other reason is I love the iFi card, and I love what they're doing with that, and the technology is only going to get better. And being able to have something like an iFi card in the second slot and still putting a really nice SanDisk memory slot memory card in your first slot. Why I like that is because I always have the high resolution RAW files recording on my high quality SanDisk memory card, while the iFi card is only recording my JPEG files. I just don't trust the iFi card yet to be recording all of my RAW files and having all the important data on it. I don't know how they're made, how good they are, so I love having two SD card slots for that. Now, we don't have that on this camera. However, it does have Wi-Fi built in that, so we'll take a look at the details on the Wi-Fi in a minute. Moving around to the back of the camera, two things that were a little bit notable to me. One is that this jog wheel right here has gotten a lot smaller, and I really wish that it was a little bit bigger. I understand Canon trying to shrink the sizes and still get that nice screen in there, but overall it is a little bit harder to press. And the other thing is that there is no white balance button. And not only is there no white balance button, but there's no button that can be customized to be the white balance button, which is very interesting because Canon has a button up here which is normally that manual button right here that we can program into anything else. Weirdly enough, it looks like this button has the same function as the button on the back in triggering your AF mode. So both of those buttons are not programmable. And for whatever reason, when you press, they actually do the identical thing. They both trigger into that menu. And so if I go to the other one, it's going to basically do that same thing. So they both have the exact same function and are not programmable. Also, the set button is programmable, but white balance is not one of the options on there. So that's one of the negatives I see on that. The other thing that's very curious is that the buttons on this camera have a very different feel. So while we have these let me turn the camera off, there's kind of a mushy buttons on the back, and there's a nice feel to them. When you get up to the top, they're not at all. They're very tough to press. They have a very short throw, and they're more of a clicky operation. And then coming up here to this last button right up here, it's even more so. It's a very short throw, very click, very difficult to press actually. It has quite a bit of a spring on that to keep that up. So all of them have kind of a different feel. Now, I did test that compared to what I'm used to on the 70, and that is unusual. On the 70, all of the buttons have more of that mushy feel to it. Even the shutter release on this one is more of a click. while on the 7D has a little bit of mush to it and no click. You don't get that same click sound that you do on the other one. And the 5D3 works the same way, where it's more of that mushy feel and not much of that short throw click. So that is something on this, and I was just a little disappointed that all the buttons are a little bit different, and I will say the ones right up here on the top are just a little more difficult to press than they should be. Overall though, not too bad. The other thing is that the depth of field preview button is almost, I mean, it's very difficult to get to. It's a very small button as well. It also has that kind of short throw clicky feel, not very easy to get to at all, and it's located way down at the bottom. Now I love that button because I program it most of the time to switch between my single focus and my servo focus. So if I'm tracking somebody coming down the aisle, all of a sudden I can press that button and be tracking them and then just release it when everybody's still again. And I love having that feature on there. I use it all the time. So I love having access to the depth of field preview button, but it's just a little hard to get to. And I wish the Canon had made that a little bit bigger. Now, going to the use, a couple things that are different about this camera. One is it does have a nice touchscreen on it. You can access all of the controls now via that touchscreen. If you hit the Q button, you can now navigate through that and pick all of your controls on that. Everything worked really well on that. The other thing is that Wi-Fi. So let's take a look at the Wi-Fi for right now. The Wi-Fi does not have a lot of options on there. It's very limited. If you take a look at the app, basically what we do have is the ability to view the files straight from the card, and that's about it. We can download those files. Now, interestingly enough, they all download at normal 1080p resolution. We're looking at 1920 on the longest end as far as our file size, and that's irregardless of what the picture was taken at. So it doesn't look like you're going to be getting any large files on your device from that. It's just basically a small JPEG option from those RAW files. And you really don't have a lot of options under that. You can email them to yourself, but that's about it. So I wish that Canon had included some more functionality. You're actually even going to get a little more functionality out of the Wi-Fi or the MiFi cards, which is why I like those so much. The other thing on that is that we do get the ability to have live view on that, and the ability to have focus, full control over all of our settings, things like that. So that is a great feature to the Wi-Fi built in, and something I love having and love seeing on there. And I just wish they had a little bit more options as far as getting access to your photos, maybe having some different size options, slideshow options, things like that. Also, the connection between the two, you have to tell it to connect, which is a little annoying on there. And actually, if you switch to video mode, it will not let you record video until you have deactivated the Wi-Fi on it. So you're constantly triggering that on and off, and that's a little bit annoying. Now, another thing I did notice on this camera is it does have the same silent modes that we would see on a camera like the 5D3. However, they really are not that silent. So I can go ahead and trigger, put that in the manual focus. It's still a very loud sound. It just sounds like a slower shutter. Not a whole lot of volume on that, not like the 5D3 where we have a true silent sound. Now, one of the good things is we do have a nice high-speed continuous, which is a little bit faster than what we were used to, and it gets about 9 to 10 frames before the buffer begins to fill out. So here it is. And so you can see right at the end of that, it started to fill up a little bit. So I have seen it's probably, let me make sure I'm on the right settings here as far as RAW. You know, I'm actually recording RAW and a JPEG, so let me switch to RAW only, and we'll do that one again. So actually that shot up to probably about close to 20. So a huge advantage on that compared to the Nikon that only shot about 6 images before using the buffer and slowing down to about 1 frame a second. So the Canon is definitely a lot faster. If you're using this for sports, you're going to love that. Now, we are dealing with a brand new 19-point AF system, all cross type points, and the center point, if you're using a 2.8 lens or faster, will actually be have a vertical line as well as a cross. So super accurate focusing on that. Much better than what we've seen on the other cameras, more similar to what we've seen on the 7D. So You know, it's a very robust AF system. I know that the Nikon D7100 has more points. However, I try to mostly stick to the cross type points whenever, especially if I'm tracking something coming away and behind. I try to stick mostly to the cross type, so I really don't mind having a couple fewer points if they're all cross type. Definitely better than what we've seen on the 6D, which only has 11 points on it, and only one is a cross type point. So a fairly robust AF system on that. Now, one thing that's also nice is we do have a 7-shot HDR, and I do like having the flip screen. And I know that's a small thing, but I've used it twice already. And one is to get an overhead shot above a couple of people who were kind of standing in my way. And the other is I really wanted to get a down below shot. And I could have gotten to the ground and laid on the floor and tried to pull it off. But it was really nice to be able to just put the camera on the floor, aim the screen up, and be able to see everything just like that from the screen. And I could even use the AF on the live view, and it was very reliable on that. So overall, very good in the usability of it. Now, I will say one thing is that the battery life on this has been a little lower than what I've typically seen on the Canon cameras. I'm going to say that most of that is probably due to the fact that I am using autofocus live all the time when I'm shooting my video. So that's probably what it's due to. Either that or there might be something in the programming that's causing a little bit more battery drain than we're used to. Now, when it comes to quality, still images. Let's take a look at the still right now. Images are sharp thanks to the 20 megapixel sensor on there. Plenty of resolution available. When we take a look at the dynamic range, it definitely seems better than what I'm used to on the 7D. You know, an image that would really need an HDR shot to look decent, we can pull it off by just taking one RAW file, lowering the highlights on there, and then boosting the shadows up 100%. And you're going to see some grain in there, but really it's not that bad, and a little bit of noise reduction really can clean that up. So to me, that looks better than what I'm used to seeing from the Canon 70. Now, I will be putting those two cameras right beside each other, also with the 5D Mark III, just to basically see how Canon has done, where they've been coming from, and where they're going to, and see where the 70D sits in between those cameras as far as quality is concerned. Now, in addition to dynamic range, the low light results also seem much better with very little differences in noise until around 1600. The images are extremely clean. I can really get all the detail that I know was there that I can't even see until I zoom into 100%. That detail is still there at 1600. At 3200, it gets a little more noise. It starts to cover up the detail a little bit more, but it's still there. And once again, I can't even see this detail until I zoom into 100%. And when you're talking about 6400 ISO, that's the time that you begin to lose a little bit of that detail. You're not going to notice that at normal resolutions, only when zooming into 100%. So I will say that the camera performed really well up until 3200 ISO. At 6400, it was still very usable. I would not hesitate to shoot on that at all. Very good, even at 6400 ISO. Now, when it comes to the video quality has improved some, but not massively. The shots do seem, a little bit sharper maybe than the Canon 7D, but it doesn't seem like we're seeing anything revolutionary on this at all. The 70D does seem to struggle a bit with scenes with a lot of detail, and I'm seeing some noise and moire in the fine details, even when viewing it on my computer from the file. I'm not sure what you guys are going to see when you view this as a compressed movie clip, but I am able to see them even when shooting it, and I'm shooting these at the lower compression all-eye recording, so that is basically the best this camera can do, and I'm still seeing some of that. Now, it does seem to struggle a little bit in the low ISO. I think it's still better than the 7D, but even at 1600 ISO, I am seeing some noise in there. By 3200 ISO, it's really looking a little bit unusable on that, and by 6400 ISO, I can definitely see the noise all over the place on that. And so, it's a step better than the 7D, I would say, but you're not going to get anywhere near the low light results that I've been seeing on cameras like the Canon 5D Mark III, for example, but that's a full frame camera. Even the 6D is going to be a full frame camera. So those two cameras did get a little bit better than what I've been seeing on this. So I will say this is probably a little bit similar to what we saw in the Nikon D7100. Right around that 1600 ISO is about the tops you can go before things start to look a little bit ugly. And at 6400 ISO, I really consider that probably unusable in most cases. Now, as far as the AF is concerned, the AF has been a vast improvement to what we've seen on Canon cameras, even an improvement on what we've seen on Nikon cameras in the past. The AF tracking works unbelievably well, had no issues at all keeping continuous focus on a person's face, especially because the facial recognition was great. When tracking an object, it could sometimes lose the object as we were tracking from the frame, but you know, all in all, it is unbelievably, I have no problem using it at all. And in fact, when I shoot with this camera, I will most likely have that autofocus turn on all the time. It was extremely accurate, much better than I was able to get with manual. So I do think it's something that I'm going to be using all the time, and I'm really pleased by the results on that. So you will be hearing it. I do have a video showing you the noise that you're going to see. If you're not using Canon's STM lens, this is their 18 to 55 millimeter STM lens. If you're using that, the results were just about silent as far as focusing and aperture changes. So very, very quiet lens. However, if you're using anything else, I shot most of these with the Tamron 24 to 70. And you will be hearing the focus motor on that if you're using the onboard mic. If you're using an off-camera mic, you don't really hear it as much. And the aperture as well, you will hear that on the Tamron 24 to 70, but you won't hear that on the STM lenses. And so you can look at this video too if you want to get a little more detail on how that sounds exactly. Now, I will say I didn't notice any differences as far as the focusing speed. Both of them are focusing extremely fast and accurate, which I'm happy to say because I love that Tamron 24 to 70 as my video lens. So that's the one I use for most of these recordings, and I was very happy with the way that that performed on the 70D. You also have a ton of focus options on the 70D for video recording, and also I love the ability to just tap a little button on the back of the camera, on the back of the screen, and be able to turn off that servo. So once you've achieved focus, if your subject really isn't moving, if you don't want to risk the camera maybe hunting for another object, just tap on that completely silent. It doesn't affect anything, and it'll stop hunting and keeping track of that focus, and then you just tap it one more time and it'll pursue that object once more and continue tracking it throughout the frame. So, you know, definitely some great options on that, and I'm really, really happy to see what Canon has managed to achieve with that autofocus. Now, there are some limitations to the Canon 70D. Most notably is there is no aperture priority mode, there is no shutter priority mode, there is no manual audio while shooting video. So you cannot control the audio levels. You can control them before you start recording, but just not after. And the other thing is that you have to disable that Wi-Fi in order to shoot video. So that was a little bit annoying on that, but those are the limitations. I do have another video showing those in detail and going over those. So if you'd like to see that a little bit more, you can click on that. But, you know, overall, it's what we would expect from a camera like that. The Nikon D7100 had even worse issues. You couldn't even change the aperture while recording. At least you can change the aperture while recording when in manual on this camera. And then also the Nikon did not have manual control over the audio while recording either. So basically it's really what we've seen from that. Maybe Magic Lantern can give us some options on that pretty soon. Now, Canon did introduce that new recording mode that we've seen from the 5D3 and the 6D with a lower compression on that. The file sizes were about 3 times as large. They do look a little bit better, especially if you're doing fine detail type stuff. It is the best that you can get in a camera like this. We do not have clean HDMI out on this camera, at least as of now. So, but that does involve a lot of extra stuff. You need to have a recorder to be able to do that, large hard drives. Definitely a much more robust workflow than shooting it straight out of the camera in a lower compression mode. So it's very nice to see that on this camera, and overall it works very, very well. So all in all, the 70D is a huge improvement from what we're used to on the Canon cameras. Definitely much better than the 60D in just about every way. When put up against the Nikon D7100, while the D7100 does have some solid strengths, in dynamic range most of the time, and then the sensor crop mode, dual SD card slots. You know, the Canon 70D more than makes up for those with great low light performance, an unbeatable autofocus in live view or movie mode, Wi-Fi, much faster shooting, and it's much better for usability for video. And while the 70D is not without its faults, it's great to see some innovation on Canon's part, because it really seemed to lack with cameras like the T5i, and then we waited so long for this camera coming from the 60D, and we're still waiting on an upgrade for the 7D. So it's great to see Canon introducing some new stuff, especially since it's taken it so long to bring out some new cameras. I do think that the 70D is a strong contender, and you know, I was hoping for a little bit better as far as the video quality. It is one of the best cameras, DSLRs, available on the market today for quality, especially for its price, and I strongly recommend this camera for both photographers and videographers because of those options. It really does have great quality in that. So if you want to, you can stay tuned, and I'll be putting up this camera against the 5D3 and the 7D, so you can really see where Canon has put this camera in for as far as quality is concerned, and see how it stacks up to those cameras. Now, once again, I do have all of the raw files uploaded up on the website, so go ahead and take a look. learningcameras.com. You can follow us on Twitter at Learning Cameras, and we'll be posting basically any little things that we find out about these cameras while shooting them, good or bad, that we want to make you aware of. So you can feel free to follow us there, and take a look at some of those the links that we have for these cameras. You know, we appreciate you using those links whenever you go to purchase your cameras. It kind of helps keep things going with the website, and helps us bring these videos to you. So if you appreciate the videos and want us to continue that, I really would appreciate you using those links to purchase those products if you use those sources for it. So Amazon, Adorama, even eBay, those kind of things. I do have those links up on the website, so take a look at those there. And if you have any comments, have any questions, feel free to sound off in the comments section here or on the website, and take a look at the forum as well, because you can post your comments, post some of your pictures, and maybe some of the settings and observations you've had while using the Canon 70D.